Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Farheen Yamin, and I am a member of Patient and Public Advisory Group at DARE UK. DARE UK means Data Analytics Research Environment UK. I will be co-chairing today's session alongside my colleague Katie, and we are really pleased to welcome you to this webinar. Next slide, please. This is the launch webinar of DARE UK's Our Data, Our Say Public Contributor Network. In this session, attendees will learn more about what the DARE UK program is about, what public involvement and engagement activities are happening, and the purpose of this network. And in the second half of the webinar, there will be an opportunity for attendees to ask questions to our panel. And some housekeeping. Please keep your mic muted unless you are called on to ask a question. This is so we do not have background noise while others are speaking. If you have any questions for the speakers, please add these to the chat. You will also be invited to raise your hand if you have a question in the panel session in the second half of this webinar. Please save your questions for the panel session. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be published online at a later date. The link to the recording will be shared with everyone who has registered. And now our panel presentation. We will now hear from Michelle, who is the Program Manager at DARE UK. Michelle will be providing an overview of the DARE UK program so you have more of understanding about what we do and how we work. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Farheen. Just going to share my screen. Can everyone see those slides okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay. So, hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Amugi, and I'm a program manager with the DARE UK program. Lovely to meet you all, and thank you for attending today and for engaging with our program. I'm just going to give you an overview of DARE UK and talk through our vision, goals, and how we achieve those goals. So DARE UK is a program that's focused on sensitive data, and that's all types of sensitive data: health, education, criminal justice, sensitive data that affects people, communities, and populations. And we're also looking at data linkage. So how to ensure that sensitive data can be safely connected from different TREs in order to benefit people, to benefit communities, and to benefit populations by allowing for linkage of sensitive data. So it therefore leads me to give an explanation as to what sensitive data is. Sensitive data is data which has personal identifiable information. So things like a person's name, where they live, or identification numbers like national insurance numbers. Even though sensitive data is de-identified, so these details, these personal identifying informations can be removed, there can be potential for people to be identified when it's put with other pieces of data. So for example, a person's name might be removed, but their health condition and the area they live may allow others to identify who that person is, because it may be there's very few people living with that condition in that area. Other types of sensitive data are commercial data. So that's retail information, people's shopping habits, your loyalty cards from Tesco, business details, confidential product details, things like intellectual property are also types of sensitive data. And so DARE is focused on that, not just health data, not just education data, but all types of sensitive data, whether that's legal justice data, education data, administrative legal data, etc. All types of sensitive data we focus on. Now, sensitive data is kept as safe as possible through the use of TREs, which stands for Trusted Research Environments. In order to protect people's data, sensitive data is stored in TREs. And they are very secure. They're secure computing environments which allow people to remotely access data to conduct research. And that research is used to save and improve lives. to look at different questions and topics and to explore how things can be improved by looking at data over time. So by keeping sensitive data in trusted research environments, it helps make research a lot safer because it means that not anyone and everyone can access this important personal data. It's kept securely and is protected. And one of the ways, the key ways in which sensitive data is protected is through something called the 5 safes. And that is making sure that only safe people can access this data. So researchers and those who want to access data have to be assessed, first of all. They need to be trained and taught when they are looking at data, how do they make sure they're keeping it safe? They have to be accredited. So they have to put in their details into a system and be approved as a researcher and then allowed to have access to that data. So that helps to ensure that sensitive data is being kept safe by the right people accessing that data. The 5 safes also stipulates that we should make sure there's only safe projects being conducted. So someone can't just request to access data for the sake of doing something for their own personal gain, perhaps, or for the wrong reasons. Ethics panels are used to assess what the data is going to be used for. Is it ethical? Is it going to benefit the public? If so, then they are allowed to access the data. But there's a clear assessment that has to take place first to ensure the project is safe and therefore give approval for it to be accessed, the data to be accessed. The 5 safes also stipulates that there should be safe settings, that data should only be possible within secure technology systems. So it never ever leaves the TRE. It can't be that it's on someone's mobile phone, access to hundreds of thousands of people's data, for example. It must be in a secure TRE system that people can remotely access to make sure that data is protected. And then safe data. Only data has been de-identified, so had the names removed, age removed, gender removed, de-identified safely can be used. And that's to help protect privacy. And it's not necessarily that all those details are removed, but definitely names. The name is always removed, de-identify data to make it safe. And finally, there's safe outputs. When research is conducted, at the end of it, when those outputs are produced, they're checked to make sure that no subjects can be identified. So before the data is sent out into the world, very clear checks are done. So these are ways in which sensitive data is kept safe. Now, DARE UK is looking at all types of sensitive data, and therefore at TREs, because that's where sensitive data is held. And our aim, our purpose, is to champion the secure and safe use of sensitive data. So to share good practice, to think about how to improve safety, how to make it even more secure for people, and ultimately, by doing that, to ensure that more research can be done on data to improve the quality of life. DARE's also looking at supporting the creation of environments for better linked data research. So the ability to take data from one TRE and from another TRE and to link that data together, again, to maximize the potential to improve people's lives. If more than one data set can be looked at from different TREs, more complex questions can be answered and more can be done to improve the lives of people in society. DARE's also looking at establishing a connected ecosystem of like-minded specialists. So bringing together different organizations, researchers, data owners to work together to improve things so that we're all moving in the same positive direction. And examples are being shared of how to do things in the right way, and others are then following those examples. So why is this purpose important? DARE was created because TREs, so the environments where sensitive data are held, are very expensive to set up and run. And as a result, money is used for that, and there's less funds available for research. The processes to access data are very complicated and take a lot of time. So when a researcher wants to access data, sometimes it can take a year and a half. And that then impacts on the amount of positive impact they can have on society. if a lot of time is being spent just accessing the data, it means that time then can't be used to answer difficult questions, to identify trends and patterns, and then those for that data to be used to identify solutions. It's also been the case that more and more TREs are being set up in the UK. But before there wasn't necessarily a clear criteria as to what makes a TRE a TRE. So many TREs were being sprung up, but in different ways with different systems. And that therefore made it complicated for TREs to work together. And it also made it difficult for researchers because with each TRE having a different process and system, researchers have to adapt to each one. Again, it's time consuming. Again, it's inefficient. Finally, research projects where data from more than one TRE is being used does not happen or did not happen routinely. And DARE is trying to make that routine, trying to make it so that if someone wants to look at education data from one TRE and health data from another TRE, for example, and link those two things together to explore the impact of one on the other, that can be done with ease. So how does DARE achieve its purpose? We don't build service or products. We aren't the builders of those things. But what we do is we give funding to those who do build those things, and we work with them to support the building of products, solutions, services to help improve sensitive data research in the UK. We ourselves don't develop and define new standards, but we support those who are working on improving and adopting existing standards. DARE isn't here to say we need to start again and start afresh and do everything over. We're here to pull out and to see where there's existing good work happening and to amplify that and improve that. We don't sit in an ivory tower and decide what everyone has to do and say, you must do it this way, it must be that way only. We work in partnership across the UK. So we convene the sensitive data research community through meetings, through surveys, and talk to people, talk to organizations to understand what the problems are and to understand the solutions and to co-create those solutions. We don't work within a specific research area. So we may be funded by health data research, but DARE UK looks at all sensitive data types, not just health, not just education, but all of it and more. So what are some of the things that we are doing in phase 2 to help improve sensitive data research? Slightly different version, that's fine. So we are funding the development of new solutions in the field of sensitive data use. And that's through the DARE UK Innovators, a program of work which is looking at new ideas, new solutions, and approaches to solve the challenges that exist in sensitive data research. And we provide funding to a number of groups or organizations to do this. We're also funding community groups from different organizations who come together with a shared interest and shared goals to tackle different challenges that they themselves identify within sensitive data research. And we give money to support their work and catalyze them to produce positive change. We also spend time gathering feedback from organizations that work with sensitive data. So for example, every other year we conduct a landscape review, which is where we survey people who work in sensitive data to understand the challenges and the unmet needs, and to see what the impacts of some of the solutions that we are developing in tandem with others are having. Are they changing things in a positive way? And that's to make sure that we don't put funding where it isn't needed. And finally, we work closely with the public in all that we do. So this group, Our Data, Our Say, is fundamental to the work that DARE does. Public benefit is at the forefront of what we do because everything we do is for the public. So we need to make sure we're engaging, understanding the concerns, understanding what makes the public feel reassured and comfortable, and having that in our minds when we work with others to develop systems around sensitive data research. And this is just an overview of the Dare UK team. So as a team, we are a central delivery team, quite a small team. So we have Emily Jefferson, who is the director of the program, Rob Baxter, who is the technical lead, myself, a program manager, Wesley, a comms and engagement manager, Katie, a project coordinator, and Naj, program manager, then finally Lizzie, who's the senior engagement manager. And we work with others in the community. We work with a lot of different organizations. If I had to put them all on the slide, it'd be very cramped. Probably about 30 different organizations that we work with, possibly even more, to improve sensitive data research in the UK for public benefit. So I'll just finish with just an overview of how you can stay in touch and find out more about our program. So we have our website. We've got a newsletter that you can subscribe to. So if you scan the QR, it will take you to there. You can also follow us on LinkedIn or on X. So please do continue to be engaged with us. And I will just finish there and hand back over to Katie.
Thank you, Michelle, for your presentation. I'd now like to introduce Lizzie, who is the Senior Engagement Manager at Dare UK. Lizzie will talk about UK's public involvement and engagement work and what you can expect from being a member of Our Data, Our Say. Over to you, Lizzie.
Thank you, Faheen. I will just share my slides. Can everyone see those slides? Yep, great. Yeah, so as Faheen said, I'm going to talk a bit about the Our Data, Our Say public network and what you can expect being involved in it. So just to begin with setting the scene, so on the screen here, I've got our public involvement and engagement objectives. So these are the objectives that sit across the whole programme, so beyond just Our Data, Our Say. So we have 5 key objectives that we want to achieve through our public involvement and engagement. So the first is to foster a culture of public involvement and engagement, or PIE as it's written here, within the Dare UK programme, ensuring it's recognised and valued at every level. So this is really ensuring that public involvement and engagement, public input shapes all aspects of the programme. Objective 2 is to ensure meaningful and equitable public involvement throughout the life cycle of the Dare UK programme and its initiatives. So this is really about making sure that public input actually has an impact in our work, that it's not just a tick box exercise, we're not just doing it for the sake of it, but that it really has an impact on the work that we're doing. Objective 3 is to build public trust and transparency by proactively sharing information and engaging in open dialogue with the public on programme developments and decisions. So this is really around being open about the work that we're doing, sharing up-to-date, relevant and accessible information on our website in webinars like this, so that people know what we're doing and can follow along our work. 4 is to empower the public by providing the necessary support and education to meaningfully participate in discussions about sensitive data research in the UK. So again, this is around making sure that our information is accessible to everybody in different formats. So we create different videos, we have blogs, events like these again. So just making sure that there's different ways for everybody to get involved. Objective 5, finally, is to create mutual benefit between the Dare UK programme researchers and the public through collaborative interaction and engagement. So making sure that we're bringing together all of our stakeholders to learn from each other and work together towards shared goals. So in terms of our public engagement and involvement activities, so I've just put them all together on the screen here. Of course, to the far right is why we're all here today, to hear about the new public network, which is Our Data, Our Say. But just to introduce you to our other public involvement and engagement work. So on the far left here, we have public dialogues. So this is engaging with the wider public on specific topics relating to sensitive data research. So we began the programme back in 2022 in the first phase of the programme with a public dialogue on attitudes towards the use of sensitive data for research. So we explored what people felt about their data being used and specifically how they would like to see improvements across data research in the UK and what DARE could do to support that. We've also recently published a pilot public dialogue on the use of AI in sensitive data research, and we're looking to do a bigger piece of work on that this year. So public dialogues is really going out into the public, speaking with larger groups of people in workshop settings to get their views and feedback in an informed way in the work that we're doing. In the yellow space here, we've got our public advisory group. So there's just a photo of a few of them at the top there. So we have a fantastic group of 15 public advisors, a few of who are here today. So Faheen, who's chairing, is in that group. They meet quarterly to advise on aspects of the programme. We update them on what we've been doing and get their feedback and input in areas of our work. And they also play a much bigger role throughout the whole year, getting involved in funding panel decisions for projects that we're funding, getting involved on project steering groups for smaller projects, and attending events and engaging directly with our researchers and the team quite regularly as well. So they're a really key part of our public engagement. 2 members of the public advisory group also sit on our programme board. So they're also directly involved in decision making in the DARE UK programme, which is really important. In the pink here, we have mandatory public involvement and engagement in all of our funded projects. So we really make sure that any projects that we're putting money towards have that public involvement and engagement embedded, that they're bringing the public into the work that they're doing in a meaningful way. In the green here, we have PEDRI partnerships. So some of you may have heard of PEDRI, that's the Public Engagement in Data Research Initiative. And that's really a partnership of different organisations that want to work towards more meaningfully and effectively involving the public in data research and statistics. So we're heavily involved with that group. And yeah, finally, of course, the new online public network, Our Data, Our Say. So I'll move on to what we can expect from that. So this is a completely new initiative for DARE UK, and really the purpose is to reach more voices and get as many people as we possibly can involved in the work that we're doing and also the work of our partners, to reach more people and have more of a more diverse involvement in the work that we're doing. So what does this mean? So first of all, it's an opportunity for people to stay in the loop about what we're doing. So we'll have a dedicated bi-monthly newsletter for the Our Data, Our Say network, and that will be a place to receive updates on our projects and on our public involvement and engagement activities. It will be provide opportunities for people to shape decisions and inform research. So that includes getting involved in workshops, surveys and other activities that influence decisions across DARE UK and its funded projects and also partners. And it's a space where we can work and learn together. So members of the network will be able to collaborate with the DARE UK team, researchers and other members of the public to explore how sensitive data is accessed, analysed and used for research and why it matters. So more specifically, in terms of what opportunities you can expect to hear about through being a member of the network, there's a few different things that you can expect to see. So one might be one-off workshops or focus groups. So in the bi-monthly newsletter, we'll be sharing opportunities to register to take part in small group activities to learn about sensitive data research projects or programs and share your views. So that might be through us directly as DARE UK, or we'll also share opportunities from our partners as well. So other organisations that are also working with sensitive data. Also advisory panel memberships. So I mentioned our public advisory group. There will sometimes be opportunities to be involved in other public advisory groups or our own public advisory group when we open up recruitment for that again. So if you want to have more of a longer term involvement in sensitive data research, we'll be sharing those opportunities to get involved on those panels or committees. And that's really where you can play a direct role in decisions about how sensitive data is being used for research. And finally, events like this, so webinars, but also conferences and other events, you'll be able to hear about attending those to learn more about sensitive data research and share your views and learn from data scientists, researchers, and other public members. So that was it from me. So I'll pass back to Katie and Farheen to go into the panel Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie, for your presentation. And now I'm handing over to Katie.
Thanks, Farheen. And hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm a member of the DARE UK team, and I support our public involvement and engagement work. And I'm going to be chairing this Q&A. So if you have any questions for our panel, please put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll try and get to you in this session. So on the panel, we have Michelle and Lizzie, who you've just heard from the DARE UK team. And we also have Rob Baxter on the sidelines, who is our technical lead at DARE UK. So he'll be able to answer any technical questions you may have regarding sensitive data research. And also on our panel, we have Camille and Rachel, who are members of our DARE UK Public Advisory Group. So before we go into the questions, Camille and Rachel, I was wondering if you could please just give a brief introduction for yourselves and talk about what your involvement with DARE UK has looked like up until this point. Rachel, why don't we start with you?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. So I've been involved on the Public Advisory Group now for just over a year, and it has truly transformed my life. I have to say, I've seen some questions in the chat already about, you know, how is co-production done and how are we involved? We really, really are. And with hand on heart, I can say that we are respected and valued. There is equal power sharing in this space, and we are making a difference. After a year, it's a slow process. I'm now starting to see the difference that the Public Advisory Group is making, and all the fears I had. I don't come from a technical background at all. In fact, I hated maths at school, and data was something that, you know, I left. My knowledge is still not brilliant, you know, sometimes I still feel I'm in a different planet on a meeting, but it's so much better. And in actual fact, we don't need to be experts on data. What we're experts in is what research do we want and what matters, what makes a difference to our lives as public and as patient to service users. And that's why we're here. That's my involvement with a very small understanding of the data to improve the life for me, my family, my wider family, and the health of the nation. And this is a real way where I'm seeing tangible results of doing that. So yeah, I strongly encourage you to get involved. Camille.
Good afternoon. My name is Kamil. I'm a patient and public contributor. And like Rachel, I've joined DARE UK about a year ago. I'm also a member of Trevolution Patient Advisory Group. So I'm in the process of retraining as a software engineer, so I have some understanding of technical aspects, but I would say that I'm still learning on the job because of the complexity of both projects. I've had an opportunity to be involved in different things. So as was said, we meet regularly, and our role as the public is to provide sense checking, to discuss, to advise on the plans, and ultimately to further research. You don't have to be an expert in any of these areas because you will learn. It's important to have some interest and some skills to be able to commit to the role, to be able to provide insightful and meaningful contributions. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you for that. So I'll go into your questions now. So we have one from Anna, which is around how do you ensure that the standards in your research partnerships are maintained and there is no mission drift? So I guess we can look at this from a wider Dare UK programme perspective and how we make sure our projects stick to our mission, but also in the public involvement sense, Lizzie, around maintaining our standards around public involvement. So Michelle, Lizzie, do either of you want to come in here?
Yeah, I can talk to the wider Dare UK programme. So we always, when we give out funding, we produce a brief, we call it a core specification, where we clearly set out the boundaries, the areas that we want the work to be within. And then we have a panel who assesses any applications for funding to ensure that they are within scope. So that helps to ensure that any work that is being produced, funded by Dare UK, is relevant and within the scope of the areas that we have identified as being needed. And once that work is started, we then liaise with them quite closely to make sure that they are achieving and sticking to the outcomes that they set out at the start of in their application. So that's how we help to ensure that there isn't any scope creep and the work that we fund is relevant and focused on Dare UK's mission.
Thanks, Michelle. Lizzie, do you want to talk to the public involvement standards?
Yeah,
Can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Anna.
need a bit more information on that. This is fine when you first join, so to speak, and you agree to abide by the criteria and the principles. What happens down the line? Are you monitoring? Are you auditing? Because mission creep can occur. And to use a very current example, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have minded any American scientists knowing my data. These days, with RFK Jr., I'm not quite so convinced. You see, so I think that is something that this process is good, but it needs to be maintained. It is not a one-off thing. And I just wondered how you were planning to address that change of environment that might happen.
So in terms of actually research, people or researchers acting and using the research, we don't actually deal directly with them. However, I think the 5 SAFEs model is where that is used to help ensure that things aren't done in the wrong way by having different checkpoints at almost every stage. So first of all, the people who are accessing it, making sure that they have been trained, that they understand how to deal with data safely, and then making sure that actually what they're going to be using it for is useful, positive, beneficial to the public. And then at the end of it, coming back and saying, okay, you have used it now. What have you produced? And checking it first to make sure that, again, what they have produced is in line. So from a researcher's perspective, there are things in place. We don't directly do that because that's not Dare's remit, but there are processes in place at every stage to help ensure that it stays in scope. And then for our work that we do fund, so what we do directly is we fund others to think about improvements from a governance point of view as well. So in terms of the rules and the way things are done. And we monitor that regularly. So for example, with the projects that I oversee, we have regular touch points, sometimes monthly or quarterly at the very maximum, at the very least, to make sure that they are within scope, that there isn't scope creep, that they're producing the right things, and just to keep abreast of how things are progressing on a regular basis.
So that process you would go through, it didn't matter if you'd worked for many years with your organisation, you would still have to go from the ground up and be checked again. There wouldn't be any danger of a tick box exercise because you were familiar to your organisation.
It's a good question. I think with the project set, certainly. So when a new project is being done, it has to be reassessed for every new project. For a research, if a researcher is already accredited for an organisation, I'm actually not too sure how often that is refreshed, but it certainly isn't refreshed for every single project. But the project they're doing, that will be assessed. So afresh, if it's after a year, they want to do another project, that project will be assessed. Those outputs will be assessed each time.
Yeah, I think that the thing that worries me is the research is for the patient benefit or public good. Who defines that on a day-to-day basis? Because I feel that the world we have today, there's a lot of different definitions going on, and that is, of course, going to be quite difficult. Right, thank you. I'm happy now.
Thanks, Anna and Michelle. Camille, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, I wanted to answer that question from the PPI perspective. On the 10th of February, we had an in-person meeting for Trevolution Patient Advisory Group, and one of the points on the agenda was a cube evaluation of PPI component, and we discussed pros and cons, what we've achieved so far, and what we want to do. And one of the conclusions is that while it's not perfect, we want to work with researchers, and we as public contributors, we want to be involved to a greater extent. For instance, in co-leading projects.
Thanks, Camille, for offering that perspective. It's great. I'm seeing your questions in the chat, so please keep putting them in there. So we have a question from Bernie. I don't think Rob has answered this in the chat, but it's around who is working to clean and complete the health data. And they refer to an example, 24% of people say the GP data is incorrect, according to a recent Health Watch report. We risk perpetuating the bias and inaccuracies if we use bad data for research and risk stratification. Would someone on the panel like to respond to this? Rob, maybe you want to come in here?
I can pass a comment, Katie, thanks. Yeah, good question, Bernie. So it's not us, first of all. I mean, we don't do the research end of this. Think of us as plumbers in many ways. Our job is to connect together the systems that enable this sort of research. So we don't get involved in approving research projects. So we don't really get involved in the data end of things either. The cleaning of data and the preparing of data for research, the de-identification processes that have to happen before any researcher can see any of these data sets, that will be done by the data holders themselves. And I think many of those data holders do know that their data aren't as complete and accurate as they should be. And they all have their different processes to manage that. So it's not something that we see directly. One of our roles, perhaps, is to promote good practice in this area. That's something we generally do try and do across all the dimensions, if you like, across the piece. But it's not something we have particular control over. I think there's perhaps a role perhaps for organizations, for bodies like our data assay to sort of channel these concerns back to data holders and make sure the data holders continue to be aware that they have a responsibility to make sure the data they hold about people is up to date. You know, as citizens under GDPR, we have those rights. So, only a half answer, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for that comment. So I'm going to move on to the next question. So it's comment and a question from Abby around the language used, because obviously we refer to it as public involvement, public engagement, and just want an explanation of why the word patient has been repeatedly excluded from our reference to public involvement, patient public involvement. Rachel, I saw you would like to reflect back on this, and maybe we can get a comment from you as well, Lizzie. Rachel.
Yeah, thanks, Abby, for the question. I'm also, my primary interest in getting involved in this was as a patient myself. I'm a long-term mental ill health sufferer and lost my job in teaching, hence bringing me to this type of work. So that was my primary interest. And I don't think there's any deliberate I mean, I haven't picked up on that before because I feel absolutely represented as a patient and a member of the public because I see myself as both. But of course, my primary motivation for doing this is as a patient, and also I'm a carer for my father with dementia. And the data that we are talking about here is health data. So if in any way I can alleviate your fears there, that you know that we are represented and there's no lack of acknowledgement that we are. In fact, the majority of the PAG are patients, people that are service users, and patients themselves. So I think it's just a way it's worded. And of course, in meetings, there is often not a general consensus about which word is best. There's current different ways of viewing the word layperson. For example, some people really like it, some people don't. So yeah, I'd just like to reassure you that yeah, I am absolutely seen and heard as a patient foremost. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel, for sharing that. Abby, I see your hands up. Do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that with us, Rachel. It's really, really good to hear that actually this is a person now for the culture there at DARE UK. So I've just actually joined the SARTRA co-chairs group, and I'm a member of CPAG and a data access committee for one of the regional SDEs. And the issue is that it's a language thing. And so you're on the inside, and it's great to hear that you are actually being listened to. But there is an issue that's going on with the NIHR and various things where the word patient is being dropped. And I think it's deliberately excluding a group of people who would want to get involved because they are patients. I've been doing this for 23 years now. And so I've seen a lot of things that have changed, but a golden thread has been along all the way is the use of the word patient and everything. So this is for the people who put the slides together and the people who are writing the policies and actually doing the comms and doing the wider outreach work that I'm sharing with you, that as a patient representative of over 2 decades, I feel very excluded when I don't see that word as part of the slides, because I don't contribute as just a member of the public. I do exactly the same as Rachel does. I contribute with my experience as a patient, as also the daughter of 2 people who've now passed away in the acute setting. There's whole issues around the data and in terms of how some of the data can be used when it comes to AI, looking at scans and all sorts of things. So there's a huge spider's web, if you like, of why I get involved and do what I do, but it is as a patient. So and where I'm coming from is that there'll be other people who do that who may be feeling the same. So I appreciate, I'll stop there because there are other people on the call, but this is particularly now the comment for the people who are writing the policies and the documents, certainly not Rachel and Camille, who I know from other things. And it's really great to hear that you are actually being listened to. So thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you for sharing that perspective and your experience. Lizzie, your hand's up. Would you like to come in on this point?
Yeah, thanks, Katie, and thank you very much, Abby, for your question and comment as well. I think a really important distinction here is that DARE UK is not actually focused on health data. So we have health data as part of our focus, but we're actually a cross-sector programme. So we also deal with education data, justice data, finance data, any kind of sensitive data that could be useful for research. So we actually specifically do avoid using the word patient, and that's to not exclude everybody else. So we really want to make sure that we're including anybody who has an interest in data or anybody who's affected by the use of data for research, which is effectively everybody really. So we don't have a specific focus on health, which is why we don't use that word patient. So making sure that we're including people from with all different interests, whether it's educational, environmental, financial, or health, and I think the cross sector is really important as well. So thinking about things like social determinants of health, and also the effects of health on education and so on. So health is not the primary focus, it's much more of a cross-sector focus that Dare UK has. So hopefully that explains it a bit.
It does, and that sounds like a very narrow lens from a public health worker, I'm afraid. So thank you.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks, Abby. So I'll move on to next question. Well, we've had a couple of questions and comments around it. It's around payments and honoraria. So there was a comment relating to the new NIHR honoraria rates and whether payment will be offered for these opportunities. Lizzie, would you like to just comment on this and what will happen regarding honoraria?
Yeah, so Dare UK has an expenses and honoraria policy that we follow. So all of our PAG members, our public advisory group members, receive payments in line with that policy, which is also in line with the NIHR policy, which Mary has mentioned in the chat as well. So we do follow that guidance. So whenever we involve members of the public in our work, to get their input and feedback on what we're doing, whether it's through public advisory group meetings or through membership on panels or reviewing documents or attending in-person meetings, we do provide honoraria in line with those rates, and also pay expenses for things like travel and accommodation related to those events as well. For information sessions like webinars, we wouldn't provide honoraria, but any involvement in our activities through other meetings, events, or reviewing documents, we would provide that.
Thanks, Lizzie. And there was also a comment, I believe it was from Mary, about how these opportunities will be shared with the network. I think you mentioned it briefly in your presentation, Lizzie. If you could just repeat how we'll be advertising opportunities to the network.
Yeah, so we'll be circulating our first bi-monthly newsletter within the next week or two, and that will then go out bi-monthly, so every 2 months rather than twice a month. I know sometimes the word bi-monthly can be mixed up, so that newsletter will include any opportunities from both Dare UK and our partner organisations, and also funded projects for the opportunities to get involved that I mentioned. We're also, it's quite early on in the network, so we do have a web page, but at the moment we don't have opportunities on the web page, but it might be something that we develop so that if people are browsing the website, they can see any open opportunities there as well. But in the first instance, it will be that newsletter that you'll receive into your email inboxes where you can find opportunities.
Thanks, Lizzie, for that. I'm just going to use my chair privilege to ask a question to Camille and Rachel, just about your involvement experience at Dare UK. You briefly touched on it at the start of this panel, but I just want to know what you've enjoyed the most or found the most interesting from your experience over the past year. Camille or Rachel to start, whoever wants to respond.
Is that okay, Camille, if I go first? Yeah. Okay, so my most recent involvement actually was just a week ago, and through Dare UK I'm involved with the trusted research environment side of things, and have formed a subgroup. And just last week I was involved in so it's sort of like, you know, this work leads into other opportunities. And I did a 2-hour workshop on co-producing an animation to make this information clear to the public. So it's on designing either an animation or an infographic, which we put on YouTube and go out on various social media, so that the public can see how data research is used. And basically, another example of what we're doing here today, how the public can get involved and understand more. And it was most of the people actually involved in the whole 2-hour session were patients and public members. And it was just fascinating to learn of all people coming from different access points of knowledge about data. There were people with a lot of knowledge, people with no knowledge whatsoever. They don't, never heard the word trusted research environment. And I'm now part of this working group that will produce something that will go widely across the UK when it's finished. I think we've got a goal at the end of the year to get this done, and it will really help engage the man on the street. Somebody used that in the chat before, the man on the street. It will reach people like my mum and dad, people like I was before I joined this. So it's the real results. I'm actually seeing, what I'm doing with Dare UK is transferable, and it's going to happen in my local community, and I can show the results. People are going to see the results. It's not just all done behind closed doors. It will go public facing. And that was, I have to say, I'm still buzzing from that workshop. It was amazing where, we are going to make a difference. This is going to go live to the country for, and on the platform that many millions are engaged with. So it's what it leads to. It's just phenomenal. I never imagined it. Camille.
So I've generally enjoyed being a part of the group and working with other like-minded individuals. I've known some people from other projects because we all travel in the same circles. But I just enjoyed the common goal. And recently I've had a chance to do two things. One of them was co-chairing one of the meetings. And the other thing is something that I enjoy very much is creating content and writing. And I've had an opportunity to write a blog entry about our in-person meeting in Nottingham. I've also pitched some ideas to Katie, Lizzie, and other people, and I hope that they will be able to accommodate my interests and my suggestions.
Thanks, Rachel.
Oh,
Thanks,
Katie, could I just say one more thing as well? Just because Camille's just sparked me with. I mean, there's so much I could say. I mean, it's given me confidence to speak in other areas, as a personal benefit. But in my local GP surgery, there's something called the public engagement group, the PEG. And I always thought I could never be part of that because I don't have medical knowledge. And a lot of the people who were on that group seemed much more experienced and qualified than me. Since my engagement here, I understand so much more. And I'm now a member of my local surgery group and feel that I have the knowledge to speak for things that I need, and also because I live quite rurally, it's a rural community with a real lack of understanding and an older population, and I'm going to those groups and telling them what I know, and explaining things in simple terms, and the local community has benefited enormously. And they said, "You've really shook up this patient group at this GP surgery, Rachel. It's completely different." And that is, that's brilliant. That's just been amazing. Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Camille. Thanks for sharing that. And Camille, yeah, we are noting your interest. Don't you worry. We know what you're keen to get involved in. So we have 5 minutes left of this meeting. So I'm going to ask one more question from the chat. So this question was, how are you going to be able to communicate with the man or the woman on the street? So how are we engaging those people who maybe haven't been involved in research or data research before? Obviously, we hope to do that with this network, but Lizzie, maybe you can speak about how we're doing this at DARE.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, this network, Our Data, Our Say, is really launching this is definitely geared towards doing just that. So getting more people involved in our work, specifically people who haven't been involved in this sort of work before. So reaching out to communities that we're not already engaged with. So our public advisory group members, for example, requested that we put together a communications package to support with the launch of the network. So we produced some flyers and some social media templates that public advisory group members could then themselves share with their communities. So we have, so on the public advisory group, we have people who are involved in all sorts of different communities within their own circles outside of sensitive data research, and they've then been able to take away those materials into their communities to share information about Our Data, Our Say, which has been great as a starting point, but there's a lot more to be done. So we'll be continuing to reach out to different groups and communities that we're not already engaged with to try and reach more people. We also, in terms of kind of reaching even more people beyond that, our public dialogues are certainly a way that we reach out into the wider public, and for those we tend to have quite targeted recruitment approaches. And in terms of reaching people on the street, for example, for our first public dialogue, we actually did worked with our recruitment partners to actually do flyering on the street. So we hopefully were getting, you know, quite literally people from the street through that method. So yeah, just trying to be creative and reaching into different communities as much as we can. I think admittedly there is more to be done there, and we have some plans to do more of that down the line as well.
Thanks, Lizzie. And just off the back of that, just a heads up that we'll be circulating an email this week just about the demographic form for this network. So it is completely optional to respond to, but it does help us understand the makeup of this network and understanding where there might be gaps and who we should be reaching out to in regards to our engagement work. So if you are able and you'd like to, please fill that in. Okay, so we're in the last couple of minutes. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our panel, my co-chair Farheen, and also Rob, who's been answering some of the messages in the chat as well. Thank you for that. So just a reminder that we'll be circulating a recording for this webinar after the meeting. This will be in our first newsletter edition that Lizzie mentioned. That will be coming out this month, well, in April. And this will include also include some news and opportunities that you might be interested in. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It was good to see you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.